The potholes and everything, they should be shot. They're milking their citizens, driving up repair costs. It is another form of social tax. Their incompetence. So you pay for things, as we had the Boston Tea Party, no taxation without representation. A social tax. And that's what black people don't understand. And they go out there and you got to pay them multiple times. They create a social tax. They create no kinetic energy. They suck the energy out of the system. That's why the Bible says the sloth will die. They suck the energy out of the system. Their time sucks. Like the one guy who did the video on passing the CFA. You got to get rid of all the time sucks. They suck all the time out of your day. They sucked all the time out of my relationship with Jennifer Kim. They made my fucking life worse, not better. I didn't learn anything from going up there with the... driving from here downtown to Wakanda to do pads, and they busted people in from Waukegan. But when the city doesn't maintain its infrastructure, that means somebody's not doing their job. That means somebody's getting paid something they don't deserve to. That means there's incompetence in the system, inefficiencies in the system. Truly. They got more than enough streets and sand people and everything else. I shouldn't run into potholes. And I had people that worked for and talked about ghost payrolling and how fucking lazy. 5 people to tell one person what to do. When you get smarter people, they can work more autonomous. You tell them what needs to be done and they do it. That's why with my wait staff at Charlie's or Baja and that, they were all college and graduate school educated. Or they spent unbelievable amount of years in the industry and had great industry capabilities, vocational training. My nephew went to bartending school. He became a great bartender. He went into vocational training and he trained for years bartending. Then he went into the liquor business. First, working in Detroit. Oh, yes, my nephew worked in Detroit. Selling Remy Martin and that, Ryan. And we talked about it. Then he came back here and got into the wine industry. But again, he built his knowledge base from the ground up. He went to vocational school. I went to bartending school on the back end just to round out to see if they had something that I didn't know. Truly. But again, you get these 6 people to fill one hole. And that's why the cities are so inefficient. And that's why they milk and bleed off so much money. Because they don't do the proper training. They should be autonomous. Do you know I watch Waste Management? Do you know how many people they have in a truck? They're garbage trucks. 1 person. They move the containers, they load them and everything else. 1 person per truck. 1 person does the whole fucking route. Unlike the city streets, they have 2 to 3 guys on a freaking truck. Why Waste Management is way more efficient than streets and sand. They have triple the amount of labor doing the same work. So if you're a taxpayer, you're paying 3 times as much money for the same output. So Waste Management should just take over streets and sand, meaning the trash then. So it's a big difference. So either they get efficient or the government loses its doing it. And that's the way it should be with charter schools and Christian schools competing against public schools. If they want to stay, they have to win. And if they lose, we replace it with a charter school or a Christian school. They just take over. So if they want to remain the public school system, then they have to compete. And where they fail, they lose. That's what Reagan created through deregulation. That was the essence of what he wanted to do. He realized being in private industry, and he did produce films. All the films, he managed large productions and successful productions. And he had to put them all together, hire everything, do the budgets. Oh, he managed sophisticated operations. He was very good. His films made lots of money, highly profitable, highly efficient. And he took all that and went into the California government. And that's why he was big on deregulation, because he came from private industry and saw, holy shit, they have a monopoly and they compete against no one. And when they're inefficient, what do? They don't look for efficiencies. They just raise taxes and take more from the public. So it's taxation without representation. And that's what they do. They decide that we're not going to be more efficient at what we do. We're just going to take more from you. Trump was a businessman, and he talked about draining the swamp and Boeing and how much he pays for a plane. And he's like, well, that's not what I paid for. And he owned his own private jet, a 757 that he had gold leaf on the inside and everything else. And he's like, show me that this plane should cost this. And what happens? Boeing has to be held its feet to the fire. It's got to create efficiencies. When you allow fluff in the system, Boeing doesn't get stronger, it gets weaker. So Trump was actually making Boeing better, forcing them to get the fluff out of their system, the waste out of their system. If they want to maintain profitability, they got to get the waste, the fluff out of the system. So he wasn't wrong, but he's a businessman, accountable to shareholders and others. And so that's what Reagan learned. And that's why he did deregulation. He wanted them to compete, public utilities. He wanted them to get more efficient. He wanted them to compete. And so Reagan was the one that opened the power line grid to competitors so people can generate energy and sell it into the grid. That was all Reagan. He wanted to get rid of the monopolies and create competition, driving down the pricing, increasing the efficiencies. And they had to get more efficient. What happened to the oil industry, and why did we become a leader in efficiency? Because of the downturn of 2008 and 9, no one was driving down the energy prices, but the downturn did. And it forced all the oil companies where they didn't need $50 a barrel. They could make money at $40 or $30 a barrel. At $30 a barrel, because of efficiencies, they could be incredibly profitable. They had to redo their whole structure, streamline their systems, improve their systems. They couldn't do waste. They couldn't bleed off and waste methane gas or other things. They had to learn how to be circulatory and capture and use everything to make it profitable. Before, they used to burn off the methane and everything and just throw it away. Highly unprofitable. They learned we can't make it. And so ExxonMobil can be highly profitable at $30 a gallon or $30 a barrel. They don't need $100 barrel anymore. And that's what people don't understand. $100 a barrel, that is unbelievable profit for them. At 30, and you can read the research, at $30 a barrel, they can be incredibly profitable now because they recapture everything from their waste and sell it off as well, and there's no waste in the system, and they keep on getting more efficient. So they know that as the barrel price comes down, they're getting more and more efficient, more and more capture for their secondary and tertiary products. And so they have all these other ways that they're generating revenue that from the pure crude, they can get less per barrel. And that's how those companies didn't go bankrupt. And I was reading about all of this and been way ahead of it. They said oil would never pass $50 a barrel again in history. Not only because there were electric cars coming online, but automobiles were getting more efficient. The engines and everything, less waste. People wanted to clean up everything. And again, they go more miles. I go 32 miles per gallon here. And my old car went 40 miles per gallon, and it was bigger. It was a diesel, but it went 40. I had my own thing inside, so it was always right there, 39 to 42 miles per gallon. This car is much lighter. This means this engine isn't running as efficient. I'm losing 7 to 10 miles a gallon. But down here, it's beautiful. Nice calm water inside, everything. But remember, no wave, no capture. So when you have the brake walls, you don't have the carbon capture. And that means this water in here inside the brake wall, it looks great. But I'll put it out here. They worry about stagnant water. So remember, there's no waves, no carbon capture, no carbon sequestration. They didn't understand this when they built the brake walls. So there's other ways to do it. That's the stupid way. We need to move to new ways and thinking about getting rid of our brake walls so we get better carbon capture from the lake. And the turnover, this is a dead zone. Do you know this? Not much oxygen is getting pulled under. So fish and vegetation and all that, this creates algae blooms and everything else at the bottom. The ecosystem is not good. The Shedd Aquarium should be consulting on this. This is right up their spectrum. The Shedd Aquarium should be big on marine biology. Freshwater, saltwater, rivers, swamps, ponds, you name it. Everglades, which are swamps. they should understand all that and build out their marine biology. It is not only the fish, but the whole ecosystem. That's their expertise at the shed. Sandy used to be a big dog, my old roommate, at the shed. I love the shed. Chicago can build out its marine biology, and it can build it out through several different universities. UIC, Northwestern, East-West universities right down here. Build out East-West University's marine biology. And they each get a different genre. So multiple schools from University of Chicago down here to UIC to East-West University to National Louis to those can build out this. And then they can build out designations and accreditations, which are different. So, again, designations and accreditations. So they have different pathways. But anyways, they can build these out, and then degree programs. I got a degree, undergrad economics, finance minor, and I have many designations and accreditations as well to go with that. So I have that, plus I have all the vocational training. All those designations and accreditations are vocational training. So the CFP, the CFA, that's all vocational training. So those vocational work credit training, you can use them for financial service to train people out on different accreditations and designations. You can do this in the culinary world as well, or any where they have accreditations and designations. Those are vocational training, and those are tax deductible too. Expenses and so on. So again, you have these things with the planetarium. Building out, it's just not looking at the heavens, but also our atmosphere. The planetarium is about our atmospheric. And so weather people like Morgan Kottmeyer can work with the planetarium. Truly. And build out atmospheric analysis by looking through the telescope on cloudy days. And what do you see, and what light spectrums, and what types of particles do you see? So it's not only on days that you can see to the moon, it is days that you can't see, even with fog. What are you seeing coming through the telescope? So again, they got to understand, it's not only seeing to the moon and beyond, it's also seeing our atmosphere. It's planetary. We're a planet. It's a planetarium. So they're doing the atmospheric science. I took atmospheric science at the University of Arizona. We have lots of telescopes, Kick Peak, the planetarium on campus, and so on. And so I took atmospheric science, I took astronomy, and then, yes, you can use astrology, knowing where the planets are located. And then you learn how the planets realign, because that's astrology. It maps where the planets are and how they realign. So you get Capricorn, and all these other figures. Well, astrology pairs in, and it shows you where these stars are aligned in the sky. So it goes astrology, astronomy, atmospheric science. They all three work together. And then particle physics, seeing how these particles move. So, and then there's astrophysicists and so on. And these are all intergrained, because when you look out into the heavens, you're looking back at a planet or a moon, and the lack of atmosphere, then the moon has a magnetic field. And with that, it has a slight atmosphere. It's not absence of it's not void. Nothing's void of an atmosphere. But the atmosphere is very thin. And it has a magnetic field which creates an atmosphere which is really weak. But again, you have to understand how these things, and I've gone through all these things, so I can see the intertwining. So I can go up to the macro and go down to the micro. So these are great opportunities to build out. And then we have the park system, and you have the botanic gardens and so on. And they can work with all these people, botanists and other things, in the park system, looking at the soil, the grass, the trees, the vegetation, how the systems work. And going into the parks, and this is where you get the grassroots, where they go out there and they look at the ecosystems. And you work with the botanic garden, gives you a wider range than the parks do. And you can see these things on an indoor climate. So you can figure out indoor agriculture, like in the wormholes on the moon. We'll have indoor agriculture on the moon. Oh, we're going to have farms on the moon, just to let you know. In the wormholes on the moon, we'll be building out farms, just to let you know. And we need to know how the grow-off world, working with the moon's magnetic field, working with the surfaces, how do we build out agriculture within the wormholes? And the wormholes are protected, so we don't have to worry about space this and space that. And so we'll building out agricultural landscapes in certain wormholes. Certain wormholes you'll live in, other wormholes will be all about farming. And so I don't know, growing mushrooms on the moon? Because wormholes are caves. So again, we'll be building out agriculture on the moon. And all this starts here. So all that through the Field Museum and everything else, Museum of Science and Industry and all that, should be working with our educational institutions. And that means working with our governments, the park district, the forest preserve, and everything else, building out this knowledge base. How the trees grow, how fast they grow, what can we get from them, what is the bark used for? So you have these teams that work together. How can we use the leaves and this that fall off, the dead trees? How do we take it and turn it to organic matter, and what type of organic matter? Through composting, different forms of composting, breaking it down into different types of substances. So as we go through the forest and they clean up the forest, truly, we don't strip it of everything, but we don't leave heavy debris. So that's pruning. And so again, cutting down the leaves and everything else, you don't throw them in. We threw all this stuff into landfills. It was insane. And then it takes forever for the landfills. It's not supposed to be going there. We're supposed to be composting and breaking it down, and from the thermals of the compost, capturing heat energy and many things else, and capturing the gases that the compost, because different types of composting create different types of gases. So the decay isn't the same. As the matter is different, the matter changes into different forms of chemical composition, and what you put in the compost creates different types of gas plumes. So it goes from a solid to basically more of a liquid to a gas. It gets softer and drier and brittler, and it goes into the particles, and those particles release gas. And so this is all supposed to be created, and we're not using our systems right, and we're lagging behind Roosevelt University. So how are they building out their programs and intertwining and taking advantage of all of what's offered around them? So when you get people here that don't want to assimilate, that creates friction in the system, and you can't capture the opportunities. All you capture is the noise. And that's what happens, and we got so much noise in the system. It's unbelievable. We need to get out the noise and have people start assimilating so we can get rid of the friction and focus on the capture. With the think of Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. What's the first thing he talks about? Getting rid of the noise so you can capture these things. That's how efficient people, efficient systems work. They get rid of the noise. So if the news isn't for it, then you get rid of the news. Because the news is to inform you to get rid of noise. So you move throughout your day, the weather. So you go out and you have the umbrella, you have the raincoat or the rain hat, or you're wearing the right type of pants or whatever. It's so you get the noise out of the system. They tell you what is going on so you can outfit yourself correctly. It's going to be humid. Okay, I need to use this type of spray in my hair compared to this. Women need to know that because humidity causes bad hair days. So they have to use different things based on different forecasts. And so you know the seasonal weathers, and they can be working with them. And again, there's only one lane here. So what is flicking the bright supposed to do? I can't speed, and this is a residential area, and they made it tighter than ever. They have the biking lanes, and they pushed over the parking. So I gotta be able to stop really quick for this white car if he pops open the door. I can't go 25 miles an hour. I need to go 18 to 20 miles an hour. Because that door before was nowhere near the traffic, because now the bikes are there. The driver's side door and passenger side door on the driver's side is on my side. And I need to be able to slam on the brakes and stop instantly. Fuck you! You should have shot and killed them. Yeah. So I can't go fast. How many lives do you want to put at risk for these pieces of shit? How much noise do you want as I see the bikes with them dying? But ask how many people get hit by cars when they open the door into traffic. How they fucking die. So do you want to be on the hood of somebody's vehicle? Or do you want them to be slower and move accordingly because you created all these bike lanes that pushes the lanes smaller so there's no margin of error to swerve? So I need to be able to stop. Or I go on to, if I swerve away from them, then I'm in the other lane in head-on traffic. And if I'm to hit another car because I avoid him, I'd rather hit it at 18 to 20 miles an hour than 25 to 30 miles an hour. As you know, in head-on collisions, you double the force. So it's a 50-mile collision. 25 and 25 hit each other equals 50. So it's not hitting somebody at 25 in a head-on, it's hitting them at 50. And you hit them at 50, it's hitting them at 100. Like hitting something at 100 miles an hour. Now, the weight distribution between the two fields changes the energy transfer, but let's go the simple way. Same weight vehicles hitting at 25 miles an hour equals a 50 mile an hour impact. At 25 miles an hour, you hit that other car head on, that's hitting them at 50. That's a fucking massive impact. So, do you want to go with these pieces of shit that have been terrorizing me? Or do you want to fucking kill them before they fucking kill you? I go with killing them first. That's what you're supposed to do. It's called self-defense. So you get rid of them. You kill them first. It is Darwinianism. And it's righteousness. So you get rid of them. It is pure self-defense. They don't have the right. I get out of the car and I fucking light them up. So they don't have the right. So the reason they don't mind their P's and Q's, because no one takes it to them. Because they're not afraid of the government. They're not afraid they're going to get busted. They get away with it every day, all day. Mayor Daley told them to start towing police cars and that for illegally parking. There's a perfect space on the corner. But they think they can park anywhere. It is not true. They can't obstruct traffic. That's why you have no parking zones. They can pull in. It doesn't say no standing. It says no parking. That means you physically put the car in park, turn off the car, and get out. Standing, you're allowed to do. That's why it doesn't say no standing. It says no parking. A loading zone gives you the ability to get out of the car and get stuff and bring it back within a certain amount of time. But for them, they're not loading anything, so they can go into the no parking zones and sit there and wait. This is why we have no parking areas. They're just standing. It is absolutely legal. Where they don't want it, they say no parking, no standing, no idling. But it just says no parking. They're allowed to pull into that Uber, Lyft, taxis, so they don't block the thoroughfare, so they don't interrupt the flow of traffic. So they're moving righteous and just. What do you think we have bus stops to get the bus out of the traffic lanes so it doesn't interrupt traffic as it's unloading and loading? That's why we have them. And if no bus is present, maybe Uber and Lyft can use them. And they pay them a fee, as I said before. But they don't have to use them. They can just use the no parking zones. They have them in garages too, as I told them. You don't block the thoroughfare. You stay out of people's way. You don't create a road hazard. You don't create congestion. You allow traffic to move freely without interruption. They have a GPS on the Uber and Lyft and taxi thing, and it tells where the cab is. As I saw, and I just walk right over to where my lift is. It shows exactly where the lift is waiting for me. And I texted him, I'll be there in a minute. Literally, it would take me a minute, and it did. But I could see where I was and where the lift is. And I said, okay, I'll be over there in a minute. It shows me the guidance. Walk this way. So there's no reason for them to park in the street. There is no reason for them to interrupt traffic. But these people, they don't know physics. And that's what makes them like Mayor Brandon Johnson has no idea about fucking physics, nor do the cops or anything. And they don't think about it. They think, 25 miles an hour. Well, 25 miles an hour, as you know, hitting at 25 to 30 can be lethal. They moved it down to 18, so when they hit somebody, it's under the lethal. So you have to understand that. But if you move efficiently through the city, 18 miles an hour, 18 miles, the city isn't that long. I can go from the end of the city and back in 18 minutes. Easily. It's not 18 miles long. So again, you need to move efficiently. And the city has to understand that. If not, then people want to go faster. But you don't need to go faster when you move efficient. So the city creates the negativity. Mayor Brandon Johnson, is he some fucking type of Einstein? I used to work with my friends who graduated from Yale grad school, Brian and some others, and they used to work with all the parking places, writing the rules in that, and I used to consult with them on how to structure these things. So there's a few groups that own the majority of all the parking in the city of Chicago. And they used to have their business writing the rules. And they bounced off of me. So again, the system, like that yellow light, how long does it take? Because that isn't a standard intersection. That intersection is much wider. And so it takes longer to get through, so you have to have a longer yellow. That yellow was too short. It went to red, and that's where you can get hit by cross traffic if they turn to green and the car's already moving, not idled, already moving, and they see the light turn to green, and then you're going through and it looks like you blew it and you didn't. The yellow was too short. Go pull up the Chicago Tribune article. It said the city of Chicago yellow light system was too short, causing people to slam on the brakes, causing cross traffic. But the funny thing is, go grab that article. And they said they have to lengthen. They compared it to other cities. And Chicago had their shortest yellow lights, causing all kinds of accidents. Who should have sued them? All the insurance companies to get back all these different claims for intersection accidents. The city should have lost. I would have used that article. If I was an insurance company, I would have sued the city of Chicago's ass off and got all these accidents. I would have went over the police reports and got all my freaking money back. So the city needs to be held accountable for their light timing. And if they cause the lights to move too fast, even going from red to green, it is a progression. And it should go from red to yellow to green. As it goes from green to yellow to red, we shouldn't skip it on the way down. So it goes from red to yellow tells everybody caution, green, traffic starts moving. So it goes, we shouldn't skip yellow on the way down. So everybody knows the cars are about to go. So we do it from green to yellow to red, red to yellow to green. Everybody will understand it. It's already there. They understand that green is caution. Doesn't mean go. It means if you're not in the intersection and everybody's already stopped, then until you get a green, you can't go. But we need to start doing things more correctly. And yes, people that are moving can see the yellow and think, but they're not. They have to proceed with caution. And it gives them a second because it already was at red. It's going to green. It's going to green. It's in the between at yellow. So either way, it's caution. And with caution, you're supposed to be slowing down and looking. So it should work perfectly both ways. But these people don't understand that. And then if you get hit and the car rolls over you, which in trucks and that, you're more likely to go under than go over. A car hood, because it sits lower in sedans, you're more likely to go over than under. My friend Jay, making a turn, hit somebody, and that person rolled over. My friend Michael Kang hit somebody, and that he was in the SUV. That person went down to the ground and would have went under if he didn't stop. So when you have higher cars like SUV, you're more likely to run them over. Sedans, no. They're more likely because you hit them lower on the legs. But in SUVs, they hit you higher on the body. You're going to go under an SUV and over a sedan. So what does that mean? You're more likely to die getting hit by an SUV than a sedan. Do you know that? So it does matter what you get hit by. And getting run over doubles the whammy. It's better to roll over the top than go under the car. You're more likely to die being hit by an SUV. And then these, like a bus, they catch you on the front of it. So you don't go under or over, they splat you like a bug against the window. Watch how bugs hit. Splat. But in a car, they tend to go over, if you ever paid attention. So when you get hit by them, you're more going to be splatted. You're going to absorb the full force of the impact. You're not going to go over like an SUV. They're going to transfer all the energy right into you. Again, they said that's why Chicago sucks. And why hasn't the Tribune sued the city of Chicago to force them to change the yellow lights? Because if I was the editor, the next thing I would be doing is taking that information and suing the city, forcing it to make it safer. Because my people work for the Chicago Tribune. But the editor doesn't fucking care, right? Well, it's his ass too, because he walks out on the streets and he drives. So as a news agency, your people get mugged. Your family members get fucked. So I take that information and sue the city and force them to change the yellows. Doing the right thing. protecting my people. That's why I tell news people they're suckers for their system. Because they turn a blind eye and they're just talking heads. Well, you live in it, you suffer with it. So if you take it and put it to work and solve the problem, then you don't have to suffer. And you don't have to give the bum on the corner a penny, because there is no bums. So as you walk out of the Chicago Tribune, or the Chicago Sun-Times is down there, and I used to see Roger Ebert and them, I'm like, can you give me some money, Roger? Money, Roger. Well, if the paper did their fucking job, there wouldn't be a fucking bum out there. Loitering, vagrancy, fucking having them arrested. But now there are people come outside and get fleeced. And that means I can't give the money to my wife. I'm a male. My wife, my girlfriend, my family. I can't buy Christmas gifts. So this Walter Payton story, he wasn't on thin margins. When you're on thin margins and somebody asks you for a fucking buck, that means I'm not feeding my fucking family. So these motherfuckers should be ground up and spit out like the garbage they are. They're fucking garbage. And either you break them or you all perish. So go ahead, sucker your own people. Diane Burton, what a tight-ass bitch she is. And I'm talking money. I didn't see her at Urban Ministries. At least I saw Judy Sue and Nancy Liu giving to the castle, the Chinese American Service League, which they did. So did Linda Yu. And they gave to the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. But I didn't see Cheryl Burton at Pacific Gardens or Urban Ministries or the Urban League and donating. I didn't see her doing charitable work. But I saw those Asian girls do it. Big difference. So again, if you don't want to be called a piece of shit, then you get rid of the fucking problem. Then you can keep your money conscience free. And that's what the politicians, with all their filth and corruption, want to create this massive social tax. It destroyed my fucking life. I shouldn't have had to give. And that's the way I wanted to go. And that's why I told them, this is fucking bullshit from day one. I've been preaching this since I've been a child. You need to be the total solution. You're just kicking the can down the fucking road. So I should be moving free from all of this. And so you can go eat at Gibson's and walk in and walk out without any type of interaction with anyone asking you for shit. You get to spend all your hard-earned dollars, as the Bible says. The fruits of your labor is supposed to go to years and years. So again, Jesus told them to solve the fucking problem. Until you solve the problem, then the problem is yours. And that's what he was talking about. You don't read the Bible correctly. If you don't want to you don't have the issue, you make the issue go away. That's what he was talking about. So if you don't want to give away your money, you solve the fucking problem. He was forcing them to address the issue. Either you give away all your wealth or you solve the problem and they get to make their own future and pay for themselves and you get to keep your wealth. And if you don't solve the problem, then you have to provide. So that motivates Bill Gates and that as he went out solving the fucking problem so he can keep his fucking money. He finally had a come to Jesus moment and understood the Bible. Oh, if I solve this problem, then I get to keep my billions. Oh yeah, and you get to grow it. But if you don't solve the problem, then you can't keep it. So if you want to keep it, you solve the problem. And the Bible says, if you don't work, you don't eat. Teaching you, you're supposed to force them to work. And I believe in forced labor. That way, they pay for themselves. Having people live in a city where they can't afford is a fucking tragedy. Because Karen Lewis, the black fucking bitch, who I was happy got brain cancer, and she was a female. Oh, females doing this city right. She did this city unbelievable. As I showed you with this great inflation and that. She was doing it to all these black kids that I dealt with, and they were unbelievably fucking illiterate. In-fucking competent. I dealt with them at Baja and many others, and truly, I kept on trying to solve the problem, but other people, they got fed up with it and just terminate their fucking ass. Because they're only willing to take so much. I'll keep on grinding, which is not good. That means you can abuse me very easily. So you solve the problem. So if you don't solve the problem, then you pay. And it is with your eternal soul. So if you choose not to pay and pay in to get the problem solved, then you pay with your soul. But one way or another, you're going to fucking pay. So this is supposed to motivate you to solve the problem. So again, you should be highly motivated. Where are the priests? I want to see the priests out here at 5 a.m. Going out and engaging and figuring out what the fucking problems are in the morning. And then informing their congregation. But it seems like these motherfuckers stay in a bubble. They don't work with night ministry. They don't work with any of the other organizations I do. And it seems like, what can they talk about? Oh, they write sermons, but they have no idea what's going on in the city. So they need to come out of their fucking castle, and the rubber should be hitting the road. And this is what I hated at, truly, Covenant Presbyterian in Chicago, or where I was at First Pres. At least Brad, he showed up at Urban Ministries, and Pastor King at Lakeview, they showed up and helped as well. But when I went to Covenant and many others, the pastors never showed up, nor did the assistant pastors or the administration. I never saw them at Urban Ministries. So it's interesting how they were unwilling to get their hands dirty. And I told them this directly to their fucking face. They didn't like it so much, but I don't give a shit. And I told them, and in one another respect I had at the Asian churches, they made it mandatory for the small groups. Or you're out. They forced them to serve. They understand the word sloth. So they didn't give the congregation an option. And the funny thing is, who were they serving? Were they going down, like my Asian groups from Korea, all the Korean churches, going down to Castle, Chinese American Service League, going down working with the Chinese Commerce? Were they going to the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce or working with them? No, they were spending all their time serving black people. And the whole time I'm thinking, wow, all these black churches, like, you know, the one Reverend Wright, the one President Obama went to, I didn't see him at Urban Ministry, President Obama, Pacific Gardens. Where was his church doing for Chicago? Truly. But my Korean churches, they were all doing. So it's interesting. So that's why I stuck around, because they were doing things that the other churches weren't doing. So even when things didn't go right, I stuck around. Like we opened up an orphanage and many other things. My other Korean church, they went into North Korea building factories. Here in Chicago, they were in North Korea solving the problem. So either you're solving the problem or you're fucking dying. So if you want to keep your money, you make sure the government is doing their fucking job. If you don't want to keep the money, then go ahead and allow them to all be lazy, corrupt pieces of shit that keep on padding their wages. And where does it come from? Your pocket. And then you look down the blue collar. I'm paying all these freaking taxes. Yep. And the reason they keep on going up is because you hired a bunch of stupid pieces of shit that can't solve shit. And their way of solving the problem is just raising taxes. Not solving the problem. They just feed into the corruption. They feed into the inefficiency by giving them more and more money. I would be stripping back. Your budget's $1 million. Next year it's $900,000. The year after $800, $700, $600, $500. We're going to whittle it down. Forced efficiencies. We're going to lower taxes. We're going to make the government lean and mean by forcing them to be more efficient. Solving the problem. So, I don't get it. And where is LeBron James down here in the hood? You know, all that money. Have I ever seen LeBron James at any of his stuff in media? I'll go to Michael Jordan or Oprah. She talked the game, but where was the rubber hitting the road with her and her husband? I used to interact. I never saw him at any of our things. They didn't even, Judy Sue, she was on there talking at Castle, the Chinese American Service League. She was there at the Chinese Chamber and all this. At least she was helping and emceeing and doing things that help the community. And that's how I interacted with her so many times. And it's the same thing with Nancy Lou. The rubber hitting the freaking road. So, I don't get this. Yeah, jeez. So again, where is the pastors having some sack? And do you know what they told me at Covenant? They couldn't do that. I said, you can't make it mandatory? You can excommunicate them. You can bar them from the church. You can create an internal blacklist and share. This person is sloth. Don't allow them into your congregation. We should be calling them out. And they're like, we can't do that. I'm like, then why do they do this in the Asian churches? Why do they call them out? Like the freeloaders who take advantage of the church. Jen called them out. Like, this guy is a doctor and hey, he comes for all the free lunches, all the free shit, and he doesn't donate a penny. It's like Prudential did to David, my partner, and rightfully so. I had no problem with George doing it. And what did George do? He told David, you can't come to any Prudential functions anymore. And I told George, well, I'll bring him as my +1 because I'm allowed to bring somebody. He's like, that's fine, as long as he's coming under your +1. Why? Because you produce money for me. And that pays for these. I gave him enough free lunches. So if it wasn't for me, David would have been barred from all the wholesaler meetings. Because eventually they have a budget. And eventually if you don't produce, they cut you off. They don't want plate lickers. They want producers. That's why they call it producer meetings. They cut off the plate lickers. And that's what they call them in finance, plate lickers. They don't want any of them. So David was able to go to all these functions because after a few years in the business and not producing for all these different firms, which I did, and he stayed in the industry because of my grace. Everybody wanted him fired, even my owner, because he wasn't producing. He was working on his banking stuff, and the firm didn't get a part of it. And Nardesh and all them are right. That money doesn't go into our GDC and pay for office expenses or anything. That outside business activity. So it doesn't pay for the overhead or anything. And so I get charged more. And Sheila and all them, Jim, Sheila and all them are right. That the only reason David stayed is because I brought him under. And he came out of my hide. So the only reason he was in the industry and wasn't kicked out a long time ago, and I got kicked out and he stayed, he would have never made it. He wasn't willing to do what it takes. And somehow I got the shitty life and all these people get the good life. And he used our internet. He used all the overhead. And all that came out of my fucking pocket. And then he abandons me and my brother tells me he said shitty things about me? He's in a burning fucking hell. So, again, We got to get rid of the plate lickers. That means people that are on the social welfare. We need to get them off the social welfare. They need to start being biblical. You keep on supporting these fucking scumbags. They need to take care of themselves. Why do you think they don't take care of themselves? Because the government will provide for me. I don't need to get over my problem. And this is what David found out with his sister. And this is true. And I told David, you should have put your sister to work for you. But it's true. David cut off his relationship with his sister because she was a plate licker. And she didn't take care of her issues because the government kept on giving her money. And he cut her off because every time he see her, it wasn't just to see her. Every time he see her, she wanted money. She didn't come over for Christmas to share a Christmas meal. She came over for Christmas to get money. And that's why I did for God. God didn't do for me. I showed, I'm not in it for your money, God. Not in it for what you can do for me. I will show you. I will do for you, Lord. And this is where women miss my statements. It's supposed to be given. I don't have to fucking ask. And that's what Jen got right. And so did many others, Sandy and others. I didn't have to ask. They instinctively knew. But I'm just supposed to have that one, really. And it's a done deal. But until it's solved, then it's the many. And if they deny God's watching, who denies, they burn. Their choice. Until my problem is solved. So you're not winning, you're losing. And this is what I hated about granolas. And I said it's a good job they created a Whole Food for them to work in because they were fucking dirty fucking thieves. Truly. They were thieving. I didn't go to the University of Colorado because I found out, I looked at the amount of theft on campus, and it was all those granolas stealing. What was Corey? He was a granola. So what did they do? They sold acid. They sold coke. They sold marijuana. They stole all those granolas. And then they talk about fighting the system, man. And they perpetuate drug abuse and many other things. So I don't like them. They're always like, I'm against the man, because they don't want to punch a clock 9 to 5. And they're pieces of shit. That's the truth about that whole generation. They're the Charles Manson. You know, him and his people were all granolas. Fighting against the man. Not going to work. That's what all the plate lickers are on welfare. Fighting against the man. Not wanting to get an education. Wanting to sit in front of their TV all day. I'm with a woman at St. Xavier. She has 5 children. She's getting her CFP at the night class. Working it out. She has 5 young children. I'm with another girl who is getting her advanced designation. She had 2 young children. Now, she was a single mom, and I helped her out. She was in Vernon Hills, but she had 2 young children, not neglecting them, and getting advanced education. She already had her college degree and was getting advanced certifications. The other woman did too, and she was getting her CFP and taking care of 5 kids. So then I say, well, you go with the plate lickers. I go with all those people. Was Miss Park a plate licker? How about Bruce Lee? He started at the bottom. Was he on social welfare or any of that? No. So these people aren't willing to do the work. I had to wash dishes, scrub floors, clean toilet, clean up shit. And so I don't get it. I changed so many diapers, it's unbelievable. I wiped up a lot of shit and piss, a lot of diaper changing. So again, I had to do all that and still graduate from elementary school, well, junior high, then high school, and then finally college. But I had to do all these other responsibilities. Taking care of alcoholic parents and taking care of all these other people's problems. And I still was able to do all of that. So, why should I cry for anyone? And we need to get rid of the plate lickers. So either they start moving or they should be put out to pasture. And tax rates should be going down, not up. And do you know Illinois raised taxes multiple times, and each time they told them they were going to repeal them and go back down to the 2.5%? Where it originally was, they promised to set them lower, to move them back. Go through it. It is true. They promised to lower taxes. Reagan did. It pumps more money into the system, and you get to direct where the money goes. Less money to the government, more money in your pocket. You get to pick and choose who you give it to, who you do business with. So as the government raises taxes, they crowd you out. Do you know that? As the government raises taxes, they crowd you out. They make the choices. So you appoint them as a board who makes all the different decisions for your life. As they raise taxes, they tell you what the fuck to do. So you lose free will. Because they raise the taxes, they take your money, and now you're enslaved to them. You lower taxes, you create more freedom, less enslavement. So there's a point of too lower taxes that isn't right. There's a balance there where you need government economies of scale and efficiency to create certain things, like the CTA or the RTA or PACE or whatever. You need the economies of scale. But too much, they crowd out all the small, medium, and large businesses because they're a bigger employer. Go into the government and compare the amount of employees that work for the government in the city of Chicago. And then compare that to Google or Home Depot or Walmart. Who's a larger employer? So they crowd out. So Reagan understood that. There's a balance between the two. You don't want the government to get too big. That's what Republicans fight against. Democrats say you're too stupid. Oh yeah, you institutionalize things because you're too stupid to do them correctly. Republicans say, no, but most Republicans are college educated, where most Democrats, they don't graduate high school or graduate high school. So there's a big educational difference between the base. And so when you get that, they want more independence. As they get smarter and can provide for themselves, they don't want bigger government. They want more self-control and self-determination. And you have to understand that. So there's a balance between the two. And I do believe in public schools in that. There's a balance. And so what the Republicans and Democrats are fighting between is where the line should be drawn. What is the right balance between economies of scale, which the Democrats bring, but the Republicans bring economies of scale on what? National defense and that. So don't think they don't preach. They preach big, strong militaries. And so they preach economies of scale on national defense. Republicans do. Democrats preach smaller national defense, more bigger domestic programs. So it's a balancing an inside the box to outside the box between Republicans and Democrats. Where are we putting the money? The Republicans say more outside the box. The Democrats say more inside the box. And so it's supposed to be a fierce debate. So we figure out what is the correct balance between supporting outside the box, 80 countries, 750 military bases, plus 11 carrier task force. So that would be take each carrier task force, and then you got subs that are separate from them, that are lone wolves, and some with the task force. But we have subs that are independent. So it's more than 750. It's 761 plus the independent subs, you would say. They're their own military bases. So I don't know how many of those are. So again, that's outside the box. So we're trying to balance between the two parties inside and outside the box. And how much of the budget is going in what directions. So each of them have their own merit. This is why I went into the constituency, as I am independently a Republican. But when it comes to working for the government, I went neutral. So I worked in the constituency office. We help Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Green Party, whatever. We don't have a political point of view. We're agnostic, meaning we don't have a point of view. And so I went into the constituency. So I separated my individual opinion from my government opinion, so I could understand both sides of the issue. So I could work with both sides. Neutrality, I went. But when it comes to my own vote, I vote Republican. But I'm not calling you to vote Republican. There is a balance between the two sides. And you have to understand what they preach and what the Democrats preach, and getting the difference between domestic and international issues and the balancing of where the money goes. And that means the tax rates and everything else. So again, we have to set these up correctly. We got to get the correct balance. So this is why I always said we're a hybrid system. We're not pure free markets. We're mixed markets. Why mixed markets? Because we want things to go through the FDA and that, so we protect the public. In a free market, absolute free market, you become the experiment. There's no business licensing or anything else. You just put up your wares, and then the public takes it good or bad. But we have a mixed market because you don't have a laboratory. You don't have all these facilities. So the government needs to run the testing. They need to verify this stuff. So we operate in a mixed market, not a pure free market. So we need those economies of scale and those protections so people don't become guinea pigs. So they don't roll out something and they say it's good and you have no idea until people get hurt and the lawsuits come out. The point of the FDA and everything is to prevent lawsuits. And they're supposed to be perfecting their model so the drugs roll out and you don't get these negative effects. That's the essence of them, and I want them to get into supplements, refining their claims so the public becomes less and less of a guinea pig. So when somebody says it fucking works, it works. So you have to understand, I believe in a mixed market, not total free market. It doesn't work because in a total free market, you would have access immediately to all the technology to do the analysis. You would have perfect information. And that's how diversification, the models they did, the asset pricing model, and that gives perfect information. You don't have perfect information. You got to pick up the paper. You got to turn on the computer. So that means there's a delay. So that means information is imperfect. And that creates volatility. And then people interpret the information differently. They read between the lines. And that's why they see the Fed saying this, and they see between the lines, they think consumers will do this or consumers will do that. And so, again, that's volatility, and you get to see the refinement, the outcome. As the price moves up and down, it's telling you, it's a barometer of how your predictions worked or didn't work. How right you were and how long you were right for, until it turns against you. And if you didn't move fast enough, then obviously you weren't quick and you have to refine yourself. So again, the system is that's why we have the census and many other things. So you get this refinement. But no one sees the demographic shifts really quick. And when the demographic shifts, this is why all these places close down. They don't understand it. Like here, they have Indian owners of coffee places, but they have shitty tea. Do you know that? Really, their tea products aren't that good. They're getting better, but not that good. But when you shift the demographics, which they don't understand, and you get a lot of British Indians that are teetotaling individuals, they don't drink coffee, and they dump them into this market. Well, that's why you don't see a lot of Indians going into Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, because they do more tea than coffee. And so they don't understand that if we get a lot of them, then that needs to be a tea shop. They're going to sell less coffee, and they need to be converting more towards tea. So they don't understand if we over-immigrate Indian people, that they will sell or have to sell more tea than coffee. So this is what it means when the demographics move. What you sell changes, and who's selling it changes. And this is why these places go out of business. And the government doesn't watch the demographic changing and try to stabilize communities. Too many people moving in, too many people moving out, too fast the demographics change. There goes the Burger King, there comes the McDonald's, or there goes the Wendy's, there goes the here comes the burrito place. Truly. And all these businesses are here and gone because there's too rapid of a demographic shift, and they don't see it coming down the pipeline. But I analyze this and been preaching this to realtors. Like, I had this amazing model I laid out for John Zeef about 20 years ago, doing all of this stuff. And they don't understand, and they think, well, Indian people are for more Indian immigration. Well, there goes your Dunkin' Donuts. So if you want more of your own people, they don't eat what you sell. They don't eat your bacon. They don't eat your other products, your meat products and that. They're not coming into your Dunkin' Donuts. So go for more of them. See, they don't understand. They make a good living because they're on the few, not the many. If they become the many, bye-bye, Dunkin' Donuts. They put themselves out of business. That's why I laugh at their fucking ignorance. So it's very important they understand their people and what they do and don't do, because they're invested heavily into Dunkin' Donuts and into gas stations and everything else. So what they carry in that, when the demographics changes from white people to black people to so, what you sell changes. And you might be in business one day and out of business another. So when you preach, we want more minorities. Well, this country was 90% white. And all those chains were established on a white demographic that ate a certain dietary. And so they don't understand, if they preach too many of them, all the other investments like Jimmy's Pizza, my Korean friends, and they were into barbecue and many other things, those restaurants go away. So you get more hot pot and other things. So again, you have to be, and everybody says I'm racist. Racist? I just tell the truth. You have to understand how the demographics, it's the same way. It doesn't matter your skin color. You bring in too many Polish people, all the German restaurants went away. Do you know Chicago used to be heavily German? I grew up with German restaurants. I like German food. And what happened? Huge waves of Polish immigrants came in. They're white. And they're Catholic. Where I'm Lutheran. And do you know what happened? The Lutheran churches started dying in Chicago. Oh, yes, they did. My Lutheran church in Deerfield that I went to, it's now an independent church. The Lutheran churches started dying because the Germans went away, and here comes the Polish, and they were Catholic. The Catholic Church started surging. And all the German restaurants, Oktoberfest shrunk, all the German restaurants like on Clybourne in Fullerton, that was a big German restaurant up there. It went away, and all these German restaurants disappeared because a flood of Polish came in when the wall fell. It came in before, And then it just boomed after the wall, and so many Polish people came in, and the Lutheran churches disappeared, and the Catholic churches got a surge. And so it changed the whole religious demographic. And then it changed the dietary. Polish sausage and all that became really popular. And all those businesses that were invested in the German community, they shut down. They went bye-bye. They went out of business. They lost. That place was there for decades and decades. And then within a few short years of massive waves of influx, there was no more. So you have to understand how these things have severe ramifications, and your politicians are pieces of fucking shit. They don't tell the truth, and you don't understand. And when you vote with pure ignorance. And I told this to a black girl. She said, I want open borders. I said, okay, if we get waves of Mexicans in, do you know you're not going to get any soul food restaurants, right? Because Whole Foods used to, on Weed Street, used to sell soul food. It had barbecue in it. I like their soul food, collard greens and that. But what happened? You got more waves of Mexicans, and no black people. And the soul food place that opened up on North Avenue, it closed down because of all the waves of Mexican moving in. It was a good restaurant, from my understanding, got good ratings, and it closed down. No more soul food. No more Soul Train. Soul Train went away. I used to watch all those black people dancing, and then the 50s Motown, Motown 60s, 70s and that. Well, that all went away because the demographics changed in Florida and everywhere else. And Soul Train on WGN was no more. And Motown was no more. And so when you do unchecked demographics, sanctuary cities, and then you do over-immigration from Latin America, and now they're the second largest demographic, you just changed. This is why Taco Bell was booming. And why? Not because Latinos go to Taco Bell, no. Because Taco Bell was influenced, and why they grew is because of all the small mom and pop Mexican restaurants. So we used to go to late night burritos here and late night burritos there. And it was the white demographic that the only places that were open late night were Mexican restaurants. And it's true, whether here or Tucson. And so they went to them. And then all of a sudden, they started eating, all these white people started eating Mexican food. And boom, Taco Bell boomed. Down south, everywhere, because of all the Latinos. And it wasn't because the Mexicans eat at Taco Bell. They stayed to the mom and pop Mexican restaurants. It was because of why? Because white people got indoctrinated into Mexican food. Before it was just Tex-Mex, chili, and that Uncle Julio's is a Tex-Mex. It is Texas and Mexican, a hybrid. But when you got all that wave, it changed the dietary. So I'm looking at a black girl. That's why you don't get black restaurants. Soul food. I like soul food. I like collard greens and all. We had Moon Oink. Do you know Moon Oink went out of business? My brother John used to shop at Moon Oink and go down there and buy soul food. So the demographics change. And then Mexicans think, oh, well, you're racist against Mexicans. Really? You know those stocks you hold in your 401k in that? And the type of business you do? All the marketing into that market that you serve these clients? Those clients disappeared on you, Mr. Mexican. And now you have new clients that you got to win over. Like all the landscapers in that. I don't know how many Mexican people hire landscapers, but I'll tell you, seeing in Highwood and that, no one did. And if they get replaced by all these Mexicans, they're going to do their own lawn care. And there goes all those landscaping businesses. So you think it's good, they just flooded in and don't assimilate and so on? Well, people aren't going to use your services, because I've been to East LA in that, and there is no one in East LA doing any form of landscaping. It's a huge community. A lot of people work in landscaping, but they go to West LA, not East LA. The labor comes from East LA, but they go to West LA. So again, you preach these things that you have no effing idea about. And you open your mouth, and God hates your guts. He chose me for a reason. He didn't choose you because you're not fucking worthy. But somehow you want to strike at me, and you're all going to fucking die. You're going to slaughter the world. You don't understand this. Saudi Arabia, none of them understand this. I watched on Global. I talked to people all over the world. From Latin America, Africa, everywhere. I understand demographic trends. I understand the knock-on effects. You don't. That's why the Bible says to be very careful to ask what you ask for. Because when you ask for it, it causes massive demographic shifts. And all those businesses in in Boys Town, go back to those restaurants that were there before. Like my favorite diner, Mitchell's, shut down. And many others. They just went away. Because they have a different trend of eating and lifestyle. And they do. And so all that stuff around Wrigleyville, it changed. Because they didn't go. My friend Kevin King, right by Wrigleyville, ran a bar. It was very profitable. And that bar went away because the demographics became big LGBTQ. And they didn't go to those places. Those places went away. So go ahead, look at Wrigleyville, what closed down. I've already watched these demographic trends. So as you bring in the LGBTQ and grow it, you wipe out all the stuff. And then you got to get people that have more in vitro fertilization and surrogate mothers and many others. And then you get the non-traditional families because they have to adopt. And then you get further demographic shifts. And then your workplace gets further demographic shifts. You know, you have lots of lesbians and homosexuals. And that means you have a lot of problems that you haven't dealt with before. Oh, yeah. HR is different up there in Boys Town than it is because there's different drivers. As Ryan said when he did the thing, his bartender friend was sucking off all the guys at the end of the counter during the gay parade. He was serving all the drinks and doing his thing. He's a heterosexual. Or was. He is a heterosexual, dated Dawn, who taught at Jones. And he was over there giving all these oral sex to all these different guys left and right. Because, you know, men are driven. They do orgies and it changes the whole dynamics. And he's there, he's telling me, what the fuck? I'm doing all this, and he's down there, and I'm here working. Now, what are you going to do with that? Or like the party they had at Excalibur and that. They were actually bopping each other in the room. They were dropping their pants in the room as a private, but bartender, my friend Mike Stack working in that, and he told me, you don't go in there, and I did. But he's like, dude, they're just doing each other anywhere. Like the two gay guys who did each other, we have separate locker rooms, men and women, so they don't get intimate. And what happened? Well, when you're gay or a lesbian, truly, homosexual male, homosexual female, well, then the locker room becomes very sexually corrupted. And at Belly's, the two gay guys were screwing each other in the sauna. And then the locker room in professional tennis. The young girl was constantly getting sexually harassed in the locker room. As she was getting undressed in that, the woman was thinking, oh, I want that tang. And her mother kept on complaining. All the lesbians are hitting on me. My friend Andy, every time she got dressed and undressed in the locker room, all the gay girls were hitting on her basketball team. She had to quit. The reason that we have heterosexuality in second locker rooms, so when you're in the locker room, you don't give a shit about anyone else's body. You can go in and they don't care how you look. They're in there to work out, to change their clothes and everything. And they don't give a shit. But when you get that, and then you get these locker rooms, all of a sudden you're worried. That's why Jen would never go into the girls' bathroom at Belly's. She was scared. She didn't want to be hit on. I went into the men's locker room and we had all these gay guys, and it was unbelievable. And they're squeezing each other's pimples and soaping each other down in the shower. And I'm like, what the fuck? I just come in the shower and here are these two guys having intimate contact in the Belly shower. They're squeezing pimples. They're soaping each other down. Truly. One washes one, the other washes the other. And these don't have curtains in that. I have to hightail it out of the shower. And if I saw them in the gym, I stayed out. So, you don't understand how this affects. And then you get the transgender. I'll finish up in Peloton, who said he wanted full unlimited access to the locker room. And they're like, well, this is high school. These freshman girls and everything, I don't know if they should see the guy in the locker room. And, this is every day. Showering with them, swinging the genitalia with them. We already have this thing called teen pregnancy problems. And then instead of focusing on school, they're more focusing on sex. That's what Catholic schools try to get out. But the thing is, they make the outfits really sexy. And they have all this schoolgirl fantasies with the skirts and that. And they don't understand that they're too long. Too short. And that if people are getting off on them, that means they're not thinking about, and they have all these Catholic girl fantasies and that. That means there's something wrong with the dress code. The dress code is supposed to neutralize, and you look at trends, and I do. And I understand this, and then you got all these ones with, they want to bop them. And I'm like, well, if men are so induced, which we didn't at Deerfield, the girls dressed way more conservative than Catholic school girls. And so you have all this problem in Catholic schools, which you didn't have in Deerfield as much. Truly. Because the girls were dressed more conservative. So when you have all that Catholic girl fantasy stuff going on, that means those outfits are creating a sexual desire, and they need to be changed. You want to move down the sexuality. So if you got pedophiles looking at those children and wanting to go that way, then you know that you're enticing them, and you need to move away from the tight clothing. You know, Joan Benet Ramsey, the really tight clothing. So you need to move away from it, and you can tell by the reports. But this is why I don't like plea bargains, because it would never come out in trial what the motivation was. And if you don't know the motivation, you can't adjust the system. So again, you can't figure these things out in a vacuum. And all these people want plea bargains because they want all the nastiness they did, and we can't figure out the motivations because it's all sealed. And that means they can do a lot more nastiness because the system is not transparent, it's opaque. And so you can't find the information because the information is not there. That's why the Bible says the truth will set you free, and everything needs to go to trial. And I want the plea bargains, which are 95%, I want it to go to 5% plea bargains. And for anything that's serious, it can't go to plea bargain, it has to go to trial. Only very minor situations can go to plea bargain. It should be 95% trial, 5% plea bargain. Flipping the dynamics. And that makes for better detective work, forensic work, and then citizens participate in juries more often. And they're more called for citizen participation, and they get to know what's going on because they're called for jury and everything. It creates more awareness in the system. The plea bargains get the juries out of it. And then bench trials for the most sensitive. But again, most things should go before a jury. That way the public is aware. It forces people to participate in the system and not be blind to the system. 95% plea bargains makes it blind to the system. How do you know I know about Samsung and LG and Apple and everything else? Because they didn't go to plea bargain. They fought in court. And I actually got to go over all that information on how they were fighting about these different patents and everything. So I got to watch them fight over this, fight over that, because they weren't going to settle. Because if they did, they would lose a significant chunk of business. So Microsoft didn't want to give it away, or if they were on the other side, Apple didn't want to give it away. So it was better to go to trial and try to force less. Because settlement, they would have to give away too much. So they wanted to go to trial, so they gave away as little as possible. Even when they got the verdict, they already did it, and the law firm knew that even when they get penalized by the jury, it'll be less than what they're asking for in plea bargain. Because they always ask for more. So they were better off going to trial. So all those big firms, they went to trial. So even if they got a judgment against them, they knew it would be a more minimalistic than a total loss.